My name is Eleanor Voss, and I am 56 years old. At exactly 6:47 p.m., while 300 wedding guests raised their glasses in my son's honor, my former daughter-in-law-to-be's mother stood up, tapped her glass with a spoon, and said the words that would end everything. "Let's be honest," she smiled. "Daniel's mother never gave him anything. She worked as a hotel maid her whole life. It's a miracle he turned out successful despite her." The room laughed. My son, Daniel, said nothing. He looked down at his plate like a man agreeing with the verdict. I set down my fork. Then I reached into my purse and placed a single folder on the white tablecloth, right beside the wedding cake. I didn't open it yet, not until dessert. 22 years ago, I was a single mother with an 11-year-old son and $83 in a checking account. My husband had left us for a woman half his age, and the only job I could find on short notice was housekeeping at a hotel on the edge of downtown, the Ashworth Grand. I want to be clear about something. I never told Daniel I was ashamed of that job. He was the one who was ashamed of it. When his friends asked what his mother did, he'd say, "She works in hospitality," and change the subject before anyone could ask what that meant. I didn't correct him. I let him have that small dignity, because I understood something he didn't yet. Shame doesn't come from the work you do. It comes from how you let people talk about it. Every night after 12-hour shifts scrubbing bathrooms and remaking beds for people who never looked at me twice, I sat at our kitchen table with a legal pad and did math. Not homework math, ownership math. I had noticed something in my first year at the Ashworth Grand that nobody else seemed to notice. The hotel was profitable, but it was drowning in mismanagement. The owner, an elderly man named Mr. Castellano, was tired. He wanted out. He just hadn't told anyone yet. I started saving, not the way people save for a vacation, the way people save when they've decided something and refuse to let themselves undecide it. By the time Daniel was 14, I had saved enough for a down payment on something most people never imagine a maid saving for, a stake in the hotel itself. Mr. Castellano, it turned out, respected me more than any executive who walked through his lobby. He'd watched me train new staff without being asked, fix scheduling problems the managers couldn't solve, and treat every guest, rich or difficult or rude, with the same steady patience. "You understand this building better than my own son does," he told me one night long after closing. "He wants to sell to a developer and walk away. I don't want that. I want someone who'll keep it what it is." I formed a small LLC, Voss Property Holdings, using a lawyer I paid in installments, and over the next 6 years, quietly, invisibly, I bought out Mr. Castellano's shares, one purchase agreement at a time. I kept working as a housekeeper the entire time, partly because I needed the income while the debt was still heavy, partly, if I'm honest, because I wasn't ready to explain myself yet, especially not to a teenage son who was already embarrassed enough about what he thought I was. By the time Daniel left for college, I was the sole owner of the Ashworth Grand Hotel. I told no one, not my sister, not my co-workers, not Daniel. I kept working my normal shifts for another year, training the new general manager I'd hired, before finally stepping back into a quieter role, a silent owner, a weekly inspector, a woman in modest cardigans who most staff assumed was corporate compliance and left alone. Daniel grew up, built a career in finance, and grew more distant every year. not out of cruelty exactly, but out of a quiet, persistent embarrassment that calcified into something colder. He rarely called. When he did, it was brief, and it was never to ask how I was. It was to ask gently if she needed anything, in the tone people use with someone they've already decided is a burden. 2 years ago, Daniel met Priscilla. Her family had money, the kind that announces itself in every conversation. Her mother, Regina, ran a boutique event planning firm and made it clear from the engagement dinner onward that she found my presence quaint. At the engagement party, she introduced me to her friends as Daniel's mother. She was in hospitality, very hands-on work. I let it go. I have always let things go. That has never meant I forgot them. The wedding itself was booked without irony at the Ashworth Grand. Neither Daniel nor Priscilla's family knew I owned it. The booking had gone through my general manager, Ms. Alvarez, who knew exactly who I was, but had been instructed years earlier by me never to volunteer that information unless I said so. I sat at a table near the back, not the head table, which Regina had reorganized without consulting me, and watched my son marry a woman I hoped would make him happy, despite everything. Then came the toast. Regina stood, tapped her glass, and delivered her line about the hotel maid who never gave her son anything. The room laughed the easy laugh of people who've never once had to count coins for bus fare. Daniel looked at his plate. I opened a folder. Inside were 3 documents: the deed to the Ashworth Grand Hotel, listing Voss Property Holdings, LLC, as sole owner; the unpaid venue invoice for the reception, $47,000, due that night per contract, which Regina's firm had negotiated a friends and family courtesy hold on, assuming, apparently, that courtesy meant free; and a printed email chain in which Regina had instructed the events coordinator to keep the mother's seating arrangement modest. She's not really family, is she? I stood up. The room was still laughing when I reached the microphone stand near the DJ booth. I didn't raise my voice. I have never needed to. "I'd like to say a few words," I said, "as the owner of the Ashworth Grand Hotel." The laughter didn't stop immediately. It took a few seconds for the sentence to land, like a stone takes a moment to sink once it hits water. Then Regina's smile cracked at the edges. "I'm sorry, the owner," she repeated. "The sole owner," I said. "For 11 years. I bought this hotel one payment at a time while cleaning its rooms because I understood something about buildings and about people. Neither one respects you for how loudly you talk about your worth. They respect you for what you actually build." I turned to the invoice. "There's also the small matter of an outstanding balance of $47,000, which your firm negotiated as a courtesy hold, a courtesy, I should mention, that I never extended because I wasn't informed of the negotiation. I was only informed I wasn't really family." Daniel finally looked up. His face had gone the color of the tablecloth. "Mum," he started. "I'm not finished," I said gently, because some moments deserve gentleness, even inside their sharpness. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding, Daniel. I'm here to correct a story that's been told about me for 22 years. The story that I never gave you anything. I gave you every hour of my life. I simply never advertised it because I didn't think love required a receipt." Regina, recovering some composure, tried a different angle. This is absurd theatre. Surely you're not going to charge your own son's wedding." "I'm not charging my son," I said. "I'm charging the vendor who booked this event under false financial terms and instructed her staff in writing to treat a paying owner as a lesser guest at her own hotel." Ms. Alvarez, my general manager, walked to the front with a tablet and quietly confirmed for anyone still doubting the LLC filing, the deed, and the outstanding invoice on the hotel's official system, projected briefly on the small screen used for the wedding slideshow. The room went fully silent. 300 guests who had laughed 6 minutes ago now sat with their champagne glasses forgotten in their hands. Regina's husband stood, red-faced, and said something about lawyers. I welcomed it. "Please," I said, "involve them. My contract department will be thrilled to walk them through the courtesy hold clause your firm forged without owner authorization. That's not a family dispute, that's fraud." Daniel walked towards me, past his new mother-in-law, past the head table Regina had rearranged, and for a moment I thought he might defend Regina. But instead, he stopped in front of me and said, quiet enough that only I could hear, "I didn't know about any of it, the hotel, the email." "I know you didn't," I said. "That's the part that hurts more, if I'm honest. Not that you were cruel, that you let someone else be cruel on your behalf and never once asked whether it was true." 5 minutes later, security, my security, not the wedding's rented staff, began quietly settling the outstanding balance situation with Regina's firm, off to the side, away from the guests, exactly as I'd trained my managers to do. No scenes, no spectacle, just consequences delivered like paperwork. The band, unprompted, started playing again. Some guests whispered, most simply watched Regina's face, which had not recovered its earlier confidence. Regina's event planning firm lost its exclusive vendor arrangement with Ashworth Grand that same week, a contract that had represented nearly a third of her annual bookings. The forged courtesy hold email became, on the advice of my lawyer, a formal complaint rather than a lawsuit. I wanted accountability, not headlines. Daniel paid the outstanding invoice himself in full from his own account, without me asking him to. It was the first financial decision he had made in years that wasn't shaped by someone else's opinion of me. He came to see me 2 weeks later, not to apologize for Regina, that wasn't his apology to make, but for his own silence. "You spent your whole life proving things quietly," he said. "I spent mine assuming quiet meant nothing was there." That I never needed him to announce me. I only ever needed him to believe me if it came to that. He hadn't until the folder made belief unnecessary. 3 months later, my late mother's estate finalized. Buried in the trust documents, prepared decades earlier and updated only once, in her final year, was a clause my mother had added after meeting Regina exactly once at the engagement party and disliking her instantly. Any beneficiary found to have publicly demeaned or humiliated a family member for their labor or economic circumstance would forfeit their inheritance share, which would instead pass to that family member. Regina's husband, it turned out, had been listed as a minor beneficiary through a decades-old business partnership with my mother's late brother, a detail nobody remembered until the lawyers did the paperwork. The clause activated. The share, modest but symbolic, came to me instead. I didn't need the money. I framed the letter my mother wrote to accompany the clause and hung it in my hotel office beside the deed. It said only, "Nobody ever built anything of value by being ashamed of the hands that built it." I still walk the halls of the Ashworth Grand some mornings before the staff arrives, running my fingers along the same railings I used to polish at 6 a.m. for $11 an hour. I don't do it for nostalgia. I do it because ownership, real ownership, was never about the deed. It was about never once believing the story other people told about my worth.